Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock in the morning here, Monday morning, Calgary, Alberta, May the 10th. I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And, yeah, I'm just so glad to be able to be here and do this show. And I hope you all had a nice weekend. And I did. I didn't do half of what I was supposed to, but that's okay. I just wanted to continue on with the topic of child sexual abuse. We were talking about this for the last couple of weeks, and it's just so important that we cover. We just can't talk about this enough. You know what I mean? Like we really have to just keep talking about it, because the issue of child sexual abuse is not going away. You know, every day in the paper we see reports of children who have been sexually abused, whether it's a family member, a parent, you know, someone in their life, you know what I mean? A teacher, a friend of the family, right? Or it could be a complete stranger, a child sexual predator, right? And so it's really horrible. And the thing is, you know, people just look at the reports in the paper. You know, the public society just seems to look at those reports and not think about that child, and they think, oh, how horrible, that's terrible. When they see the reports, you know, of course it's upsetting. But the thing is they don't put themselves in that child's shoes long enough to really think about what that child went through, first of all, and the fact that this is going on all around the world, and that there's millions of children being abused. And, you know, 1 out of 3 girls, 1 out of 3 or 4, depending on what statistics you look at, 1 out of 6 or 7 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18. And sexual abuse, you know, a lot of people think, you know, that they're not quite sure exactly what child sexual abuse is. And so I thought we'd look at that today. And there's a wide range of different forms of sexual abuse that people inflict upon children, right? And you know, it's just horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And so I thought we'd just take a look at that. It's a website that I found. Actually, it's up here in Alberta. The headquarters is in Edmonton, which is the capital city of Alberta, and it's called Little Warriors. You can get this information. You can pull it right up. It's www.littlewarriors.ca. And then you can spell it's just like it sounds, Little Warriors, LITTLEWARRIORS. And it's a great article. It's a great website. I really like this website because they go into a lot of information regarding how parents can talk to their children about good touch, bad touch, at what age appropriateness is necessary. Like, you know, there's certain ages that a child is developing that, you know, you can actually start talking with your children about what is good touch, bad touch. And this way, if they are, you know, or do run into someone who is going to try to touch them in a very inappropriate way, they will know the difference between a good touch and a bad touch. But there's certain ages that all of this needs to happen at, and so that it's a great website for parents, I believe. And you know, just to get that information right, it's so important that these children, that, you know, that you watch out for your children, right? And you watch out for everybody else's children, right? Because some children don't have parents who are watching out for them, right? And so it's great if we can all sort of look out for all the children, right? And so you do want to keep an eye on every child that's in your life. That's all I can say. And so we'll get right into this. It's not a professional show. And I don't have any professional counseling certificates or you know, therapist certificates. I'm just a private citizen who does this show just because I believe that we cannot talk about child abuse enough. And I just want to be one more voice, you know, one more voice to add to everyone else's voice. And I just think that it's so important that we get this information out to people, first of all, and just mainstream society, you know, doesn't hear enough about this. They just see the reports in the paper, and then that's it. You know, there's no one's really talking about the issues surrounding abuse, and no one's really talking about you know, how are we going to prevent this sort of thing, right? And so prevention is just everything, right? That's why I do believe in promoting awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse of all types, right? And so that's why I'm doing this show. And so, you have to listen at your own discretion. I cover everything regarding abuse, and I think that, if you're very sensitive to the subject of abuse, then you do want to turn the show off, because, if you find that the show might bother you, then it's so important that you just turn the show off, because you have to listen at your own discretion. Ultimately, it's your responsibility, and since I'm covering everything to do with abuse, it's a very sensitive topic, especially today's topic with child sexual abuse. And also, if you're a young person under the age of 18, especially really young, please, make sure you have an adult listen to this show with you. And the reason being is that there's a lot of adult content in the material regarding abuse, and you just have to make sure that you keep yourself safe online, right? I did a show yesterday morning, actually, on child online safety, and there's so many psychos out there. I'm serious. There's millions of people looking to get a hold of children online, child sexual predators, and they will do anything and everything to get their hands on you. So you have to make sure that you keep yourself safe online. And I think that because of this show, it covers a lot of sensitive material, you have to have an adult listen to this show with you, someone you trust, and someone who you can count on, a teacher, a counselor, a guidance counselor, a coach, a mentor, a librarian, just anyone, and then they can help you make the decision whether or not you should be listening. And if you have questions, and you can have someone to find the answers, to help you find the answers to those questions, right? And so that's the whole thing, right? We have to make sure we keep ourselves safe. So if you're a young person, I would really highly recommend that you would get someone to listen to this show with you. So we'll just get right on with this article. And it's called, "What is Child Sexual Abuse?" from Little Warriors. It's about child sexual abuse. Little Warriors, what is child sexual abuse? And Little Warriors' definitions of child sexual abuse, I'm reading right from the page. Number 1, the inappropriate exposure or subjection of a child to sexual contact, activity, or behavior. Number 2, child sexual abuse, sexual molestation, or sexual exploitation can include any kind of sexual act directed toward a child by an adult or by an older or more powerful child, or any sexual act which involves a threat or violence, right? So it can be an adult, can be any sexual act or exploitation or molestation or anything like that from an adult, or even an older child, an older youth. It's anyone who is involving a child in a sexual act, right? Sexual acts may include the following: they list here touching of a child's genitals by an adult, right? An adult telling the child to touch the adult's genitals or another's, right? Exposure of the genitals, including photographing the child's genitals of the child in a sexual position. And this is going on, people, and this is not something to just think just happens to, in the movies or whatever. The issue of child pornography is so huge that the FBI has people working on it around the clock trying to stop it. And it is abuse, and there's no other word for it. It's abuse. Abuse on children. And the thing is it's happening everywhere. And it's a disease. I really believe it's a disease. It's a mental illness. We're going to talk more about this too. But it's horrible, right? Absolutely horrible. And then they list here another one: an adult masturbating in front of a child. That's abuse. Rubbing or masturbating against a child. That's abuse. Oral sex performed on a child, or telling a child to perform oral sex, it's abuse. It's all against the law, by the way. Every single one of these things is against the law. Any type of penetration of a child's vagina or anus, however slight, by a penis, a finger, tongue, or other object, any type of penetration of a child's vagina or anus is abuse. I would like everybody to know that. Just the other day there was an article in the paper, and I can't remember the names or anything like that. I just remember the story. And this man raped his little baby. I believe the baby was 9 months old. And this father, I guess. And he said that the baby was falling down, and it must have been a hangnail then that's why the child was injured, because his hangnail caught the child. Well, what he did was he raped that 9-month-old baby. And he was, I'm not sure if he was the father or if he was watching the child, you know what I mean? But yeah, I'd have to go back and get the article. All I know is that 9-month-old babies are being raped. This is a huge problem. People are sick. And so anyone who would think that that's okay or could condone it, there's really something really wrong. And you just have to start taking a look around at the papers, start taking a look around in the news articles and on the news, and see that this is actually going on, and that this is not a joke, and it could happen to your child. If you don't know where your child is, if you don't know who your child is staying with, you just think, oh yeah, it's fine for me to drop my kid off at this person's house or at this daycare or this teacher is great, and you don't do your homework and you don't do your background checking, your child could be sexually molested. And that's just the whole issue. It is going on. It's happening by people in authority positions, people who look like upstanding citizens in the community. You know, they could be teachers, they could be after-school caretakers, like daycare workers. You just don't know. But all I know is it is happening. It's a fact, and you really have to be very diligent in knowing who your child is with all day, because that's why these kids, who else is abusing these children? It's whoever has access to your child. 90% of abuse is the child knows the abuser. 90%. The other 10% is just, a child abduction or a child sexual predator getting a hold of your child. But the other 90% is either a family member, a friend of the family, someone at the daycare, someone at the school. So you have to be really diligent and know where your child is. And I know that's not easy, because the whole issue is that most people just don't have just tons of money to be taking time off to be researching who their child is with. But if you want to save your child from being sexually molested, you do want to keep or abused in any way. You want to keep your child, you want to know what's going on with your child. You know what I mean? You can't afford to just trust everybody, and you can't afford to just trust people because they look like upstanding citizens and they seem so nice, and they say all the right things to you, and so they make it, they might even befriend you. That happens quite often. They will befriend the parent, and that way they can have access to your child. And that doesn't mean you got to start distrusting everybody. I'm just saying it means that you have to keep your eye open with anyone who has access to your child, and treat them all the same. You know what I mean? Because it could hurt your child. They could seriously damage your child for the rest of your child's life. And so you really have to be careful. There's a lot of sick people out there. And really, don't skim over the articles. Start checking those articles out that are in the paper, that are in the news, and start looking at this as a reality. It's a reality, and unfortunately it's sad, but it is happening everywhere. So we have to make sure that we protect our children, right? We can't do enough to protect them. Even if you protect them, there's still a chance that they could be abused, but it's better that you do be aware that this is going on as a parent, and look around at also at the other kids in your world, and make sure that they're not being abused, right? It says here's another definition of child sexual abuse: exposing a child to pornography or using a child in pornography, and talking to, taunting, or teasing a child in any sexual way. That's another one. So this is what online chat rooms, these child sexual predators get in there, and they start just slowly working, breaking down the child's, sort of defenses against this sort of thing, and they'll start showing them pornography, and they'll start talking to them in a sexual manner, and they're saying that it's okay. And then they show them, this pornography with adults and children, and they say, oh yeah, this is perfectly fine. This is what we do. They just warp these kids, and then they try to get a hold of them outside of the home. So that's what we were talking about yesterday on my program in the morning, yesterday, Sunday morning, Online Safety for Children. You have to be really diligent about that as well, right? So we'll just continue on here. Little Warriors, signs and symptoms of child sexual abuse. And this is it. I'm just going to read right from the page, right? Although some children may not exhibit signs of being sexually abused, it is important that we are aware and can recognize the physical, emotional, or behavioral signs. And then they list them off here. Sleeping problems, which could include night sweating, nightmares, and or different sleeping patterns, right? If all of a sudden your child is having nightmares and just not sleeping well and different sleep patterns, and it's noticeable. It seems to be like, wow, something's wrong. Then you might know you might keep an eye on that, right? Also, masturbating excessively. If your child starts masturbating excessively and they never did before, or doing other kind of sexual acts, right? Then you might know if they had never really done that before. You might think, you might just keep an eye on that. Any kind of behavioral change in a child generally is a result of something that they've seen or something that they've been through, because children are little sponges and they only learn what they're being taught. So they can't come up with stuff on their own, really. They have to see and kind of be involved in something to learn it. That's the whole idea of learning. So, if they're starting to do things that just look a little bit kind of sort of sexually oriented, you got to start to wonder what they've been looking at, what they've been seeing, or if they've been, possibly being sexually abused, right? So important. And it says here, sore or swollen genital or anus area, bleeding from the genital area or the anus, or vaginal discharge. That's a sign that a child is being sexually abused. It definitely is. And you do want to investigate if your child all of a sudden comes to you and says, that they're sore in their vagina or their genital areas. You don't want to just blow that off because you don't want to talk to them about it, or it's just too uncomfortable for you to talk about. If you see bleeding or any kind of discharge, you better be taking a look at that, and you better get your child to the doctor really quickly, and you better get a checkup done, because that's a big sign that there could be some sexual abuse going on there. And 1 in 3 girls, I just want to remind everybody, 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 or 7 boys will be sexually abused under the age of 18. So if you're in a room of 3 people, one of you, if you're in a room of 3 women, one of you will have been sexually abused before the age of 18. And if you're in a room of 1 or 6 or 7 men, one of you will have been sexually abused under the age of 18. So we can't go around thinking that this doesn't happen. And so that's the whole issue, and that's why we have to stay diligent and stay on it and stop child abuse of all kinds, especially child sexual abuse. It's really wrong. Society somehow has managed to think that it's okay. I don't know how these sick and twisted minds have been able to think that it's all right to have sex with a child, but there are people out there who do believe that that is true, and they are fighting the government right now because they want to be able to do that. And it's a crime, and the police are busting down all kinds of groups and things like that. But the thing is that these are people in people's homes and people's families that are doing most of the abuse. Uncle Ted and brother Billy Bob, and you know what I'm saying? This is family members generally that are abusing these children, or the father, right? Or the mother, because mothers do sexually abuse their children as well. So it's a smaller percentage, but they do it. Because these mothers are generally, if you think about that, a female teacher, she could be a mother too. And many, many female teachers abuse children sexually. I mean, there's more than you know. You just have to start looking around. That's the whole issue. The information is out there. And that's why we have, that's why the internet is so great, because there is some great information out there. But unless you use your fingers and start typing into your browser child sexual abuse and start finding out who's actually abusing these children, you might see just exactly what a sick world this is, and that there's so many people out there who look like upstanding citizens with all the right haircuts, they drive all the right cars, they live in all the right homes in the right parts of town, and they are sexually abusing your children. So you want to be very, very aware of what's going on. It's so important. We cannot even talk about this enough. This needs to be mainstream as far as I'm concerned. It should be on, as far as I'm concerned, there should be national talk radio shows, nationwide, getting this information out to people, because we could save a lot of children from abuse. That's, you know what I mean? I mean, we can't stop it all probably right now, but I'd like to think that eventually we will. But the thing is we have to stop as much of it as we can, because 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18. So it's a real disease, it's a sickness, and there's a lot of sick people out there, that's for sure. So here's some more signs that your child might be sexually abused. Genital infections or pain when urinating or having a bowel movement. Exhibiting sexual behaviors that are not age appropriate, including acting out with toys, friends, or siblings. That means that they have seen something, right? If you see your child acting out sexually on toys or with toys or on friends, with friends or siblings, then you might begin to wonder, what has my child seen or been through that my child would mimic this sexual act or this sexual behavior, because they can't learn it any other way. So they have to have seen it. That's why you want to be very, very careful what your child sees on the TV. You know what I mean? Do not let your child watch sexually inappropriate material at a young age. I'm serious. This is such a serious issue. You cannot allow your children to be warped at a very young age like that. They really need to be children. They need to develop into their own sexuality and not have sexuality pushed on them. You know what I mean? They should have the opportunity to grow into that, like the other two that aren't sexually abused out of the three. You know what I mean? We have to make sure that you don't include your child in on all your sexuality stuff. You have to be, as a parent, very diligent what your child watches on TV, what they're watching in the home, how you behave around your children, because they will pick it up and they will continue it on. It's just a learned behavior. Everything is learned pretty much learned behavior for a child, right? So if you see your child acting out all of a sudden in a very inappropriate manner, including things with acting out with toys, friends, and siblings, you better start thinking there's something going on. Fear of being with a certain person or in a certain place. Now that's a big one. If your child goes to a daycare and they just love it, and then all of a sudden, every day they're just so happy to go, and then at one day all of a sudden they're crying and freaking out and they're kind of uncomfortable, fidgeting, and they don't want to go in, keep kind of whining about it, maybe looking uncomfortable, but they don't tell you anything. You better think about what happened over there at the daycare, and stop thinking about how the fact that you're going to be late to work. Because you might lose your job, but your child's probably losing their innocence. Because if that child is squirming and does not want to go into that daycare and can't physically tell you because they're not old enough to tell you, then you better keep a lookout at the signs of that. Because that means somebody has probably done something to them there that has made them uncomfortable and they don't want to go back. And then if you have an older child who tells you, I don't want to go there anymore, and you just tell them, I don't care what you want, you're going as a parent, and then they go, and then your child is sexually abused, you better kind of be blaming yourself for not paying attention to your child. And that's the whole issue. We cannot just blow it off. It's happening everywhere. And so you do want to be prepared for that, right? And you want as a parent, we should all be able to tell our children, you could come to me and tell me anything at all and everything, and I will not take it out on you. I will help you with anything I can. You know what I mean? Because as a parent, that's what we owe our children. And so, I'm not a parent, but if I was, that's what I would be doing, because I know in my case, that was not the case. I was sexually molested as a child. My mother did nothing about it. I told her because I was in pain. It was a family member, and I told her, and she just said, oh, that's your problem. You'll have to deal with that yourself. Get yourself a blanket and wrap yourself up in it. I don't care, whatever. But she was very physically abusive towards me, and so I didn't push the issue. But the whole issue is that she was abusing me as well, so she didn't care if somebody else was, right? It's like, whatever. So you don't want to do that to your child, you know what I mean? If your child comes and tells you they're being abused, you better be paying attention to it, and you better do something about it. You better report it, first of all. Take your child to the doctor and get a report made. We cannot allow kids to be abused like that. That's wrong. It's against the law, first of all. It's wrong, and it should be. I don't know how a person could sleep at night after something like that. You know what I mean? I just don't. I don't know how a parent could sleep knowing that their child's being sexually molested and not do anything about it. But it does happen. There's a lot of people out there who just should not have children. I'm sorry. Eating problems, including loss of appetite. That's another sign of child sexual abuse. And, all of a sudden they were doing great, had a great appetite, everything was wonderful. And then all of a sudden they can't eat. And you know what I mean? But we're not talking one meal. We're talking over a period of time you start to notice these things, right? These are behavioral changes. Then there's probably something going on, right? Aggressive behavior, mood changes, anxiety, self-destructive behavior, that's another sign that your child is being sexually abused. Showing signs that it is painful to walk or sit, that's a big one. You do want to pay attention to that. If your child all of a sudden can't sit down, you better be wondering why. If you're not questioning it, you're just as guilty as the person who's abusing that child, as far as I'm concerned. We have to protect our children, and you have to protect your children. And this is wrong, and I know that people allow their children to be sexually abused all the time. It's in the paper. Mothers stand by, watch fathers sexually abuse their child and rape their babies and stuff. They do nothing about it. They don't call the police. What they do is generally just bury the body. They go dispose of the body if the child dies. There's a lot of sick people out there. And so you do, if you do want to be aware of that there is a lot of sick people out there. If you thought it was all just in the movies, you better start taking a look around at what's going on. Losing interest in the activities that they have always enjoyed. Sudden negative changes in academic performance. Displaying anxiety when being undressed or changed. That's a big one, because if you're a child, really young toddler or something, when you're still helping them to dress and whatnot, and for get ready for bedtime or bath or whatever, and all of a sudden they do not want you to undress them or change them, and they start freaking out, and it becomes very uncomfortable for them, you might know that something happened there. And suddenly regressing to more infantile behaviors such as bedwetting. That's another sign that your child could be being sexually abused, because they reverse back into these more infantile behaviors such as bedwetting, or carrying around their little blankie and kind of talking baby talk and stuff like that, right? You do want to be aware of that, because that's a sign of abuse of any kind. That actually happens to children, whether they're being physically abused, verbally abused, emotionally abused. All abuse will do that to a child. Can cause them to kind of regress backwards, because they can't think about moving forward in their development, right? They just don't have, because they're being abused. So they move a little bit backwards. And if you start to see stuff like that, you want to be sure and check that out. So important. Those are the signs and symptoms that Little Warriors has on their website. And their website is awesome, and I would suggest everybody go check it out. That's www.littlewarriors.ca. And they're out of Canada here. They're an awesome group doing some great work. In the next part of this article is 15 lures of sexual predators. So there's the affection lure, the assistance lure, authority lure, bribery lure. This is what they use to lure your children, these child sexual predators, right? Ego fame lure, emergency lure, fun and games lure, the hero lure, job lure, the name recognition lure, playmate companion lure, pornography lure, and threats and fear lure, drug lure, and computer online lure. So there's 15 lures that they list here that child sexual predators will use to get a hold of your children. It's very important to know them and to recognize them and to understand them, so that when your child's talking to someone on a computer or talking to someone and they can offer them money, right? All of a sudden somebody comes up and starts, oh, here, I'll give you some money, and hey, we can hang out, you know what I mean? And they think it's just like Uncle Jack, you know what I mean? It's like, no. They probably want something from your child, and what they want is your child's body. And I'm telling you what, you do not want that to happen to your child. So you want to learn these things. Get educated. That's the whole issue. I really believe that child abuse could be, a lot of it could be prevented and stopped if everyone would become educated regarding the signs and symptoms. First of all, very important, almost the most important thing, is the signs and symptoms. When you think about it, it is the most important thing. And also then how to report it. So we got about a minute left. And we're going to continue on with this tomorrow, same time, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to be, let me tell you. You want to check out our website, http://dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.ca, .com, dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And we are on tonight, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, at www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. And you can check out our Blog Talk Radio shows Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Different hosts, Tammy Tanko, Elizabeth Brawley, Donna Shear, myself, regional directors of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, will be on throughout the week, Monday through Friday, same time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for an hour, talking about all the issues surrounding child abuse, all the stuff that's going on in North America especially, and the whole issue surrounding child abuse, headlines, and everything to do with and regarding education, awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse. So I hope you will tune in, and join us live there on the site, and sit in the chat room and get involved. And just keep looking out for the kids in your life, And if you are a survivor of child abuse and child sexual abuse, make sure that you keep reaching out. There's a great website. It's called This Tangled Web, www.thistangled thistangledweb.co.uk. This Tangled Web. That's a great website for anyone who's a survivor of sexual abuse. And there is so much good stuff on there. There's survivors, art, and the abuser, the abused. There's all kinds of great links and resources on there. There's just Jess's Survivors blog. There's poetry and links. So that's a great website. Make sure you check that out. And just make sure you just keep reaching out and get that help. You know, if you're a survivor of child abuse of any kind or child sexual abuse, you do deserve to not suffer in silence. And so, you know, I always mention this on my shows because I know how hard it is to suffer in silence and to just be suffering alone and not realizing that there is help out there and that there is hope out there. And so you have to just make sure every day that you wake up and you say, you know what, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to eventually find my peace. I'm going to find my healing. And I can do this because I've got people all around who I can see, these survivors. They're doing it. They're walking it out. And so that's important really to know that you're not alone and to really get into some of these online chat groups and online support groups for survivors of child abuse, right? Adult survivors of child abuse of any kind. And there are specialized ones for people who have survived child sexual abuse as well. And so you do want to get some help. Don't suffer in silence and just suffer along by yourself. It's just awful. It's horrible. And you deserve to have some healing and some goodness in your life. And really, now that you're an adult survivor of child abuse, it's up to you to make that step and reach out, because people won't quite often reach out to us. They don't know that we've been abused, or they don't realize the problems. They might think, oh, there's something wrong with her, but they don't really know what it is. So we have to reach out and get that help where we can, and just don't tolerate any more abuse in your life. That's all I have to say. Find some good friends who are going to support you and be there for you, and find some people who really do care and who are going to walk this walk with you, you know what I mean, and want you to be well and healthy and happy and whole. It's so important, because we didn't deserve to be abused in the first place, and we don't deserve to be suffering in silence. It's just horrible. So make sure you just reach out, and you can get a hold of me on blogtalkradio.com, or you can get a hold of me on Facebook, wherever you can get that info. You can find me just about anywhere. So get a hold of me if you need something. If I can do anything for you, just let me know, and I can certainly try, and at least I can try to help find information for you. So have a great day, everybody. Take care, and remember, you're all in my heart. I love you all so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you again tonight. Bye-bye.